I was 15 years old when it all started for me. Came from a military background. I'm an Army brat. And I remember, although we had a rich home, it wasn't rich this way, if you know what I mean. 8 kids in our family. It was tight oftentimes. I thought that was what the world looked like. And then one day, I walked into my father's bedroom, my parents' bedroom, and I found a tape on his dresser. It was just sitting there. Someone had given him a tape. It was a copy tape in my dad's handwriting. It said, "The day that turned my life around," and on the other side it said, "How to live financially independent." Wow, as a 15-year-old, both those titles alone intrigued me. I thought, I am going to go listen to that tape. I put it in my pocket. I went upstairs to the bedroom I shared with my brother. And I put that tape in what we used to call a Walkman. Y'all remember what Walkmans are, right? I put that tape in the Walkman. I laid down in my bed when I went to bed that night. The light was off. I pushed play. And I went, wow, inside. It was the first time in my life I heard success principles being taught to me, personal development being taught to me, someone telling me no matter what your background looks like, no matter what your past looks like, you can determine your own destiny. I remember hearing things like always take action when the emotion is high. I remember hearing about affirmation without discipline is the beginning of delusion. I remember hearing these things and going, oh, I need to hear that again. And so I listened to that tape at least 20 times the first month. My younger brothers would make fun of me. They would say, TJ, why would you listen to a tape of a guy talking over and over and over and over? What they didn't understand is that it inspired me to the core. I laid there and I looked at my future completely different from that point on. Now, many of you know who that was. My first teacher, Jim Rohn. Powerful, powerful nights in my bed laying there as I listened to him, and then I grew beyond that to listen to other personal development tapes and books. And then I made the decision as a teenager that I was going to spend my life and devote it to helping people, inspire people, giving them tools to make their lives better. But I knew in order for me to do that, I had to make my own life better. I had to change my own world. And so I thought one of the ways that I could do that is go start a couple businesses and be successful with those businesses. And then if I'm successful with those businesses, then business owners will allow me to come into their offices and work with their people. There'll be a trust there. So I worked really hard in my 20s, built a couple companies that both became multi-million-dollar companies. And I thought, I'm making good money, but I'm not living my dream. The dream that I had ever since I was 15. And so what did I do? I went to my partners and the owners. I said, I'm going to leave the businesses and leave the fortune behind, really is what it meant. And I'm going to go interview with Stephen Covey and Tony Robbins. I thought those were, back in the day, still today, but one of them has passed away now, were the biggest thing out there in terms of personal development. And I thought, I'm going to work with the best. If I'm going to model someone, I want to get around the best. And so I called up Stephen Covey, I interviewed with them. I called up Tony Robbins, interviewed with them. 2 weeks later, I was working for Tony Robbins. I spent a year working for him, being coached by him, going to events with him, participating and supporting his vision for him. But after about 9 or 10 months, again, whose dream was I living? His. And there's nothing wrong with his dream, but there was something wrong with me living someone else's dream. We went to one of the seminars. It was in Chicago. And I was an employee. My wife was 6 months pregnant with our second child. And I remember as we were sitting there just participating, Tony Robbins got up And he was talking about living your dreams. And he said this statement, and it moved me. He said, talking about living your dreams, he said, when would now be a good time? Say that again. When would now be a good time? I nudged my wife, who was sitting right next to me, and I said, it's time to leave. We drove home that night. She says, are you sure? I said, it's time. Now, I left the organization 2 weeks later. I called my parents because I had renters in my Utah home. I called my parents and I said, it's now time for me to go after my dream that Mom and Dad I've talked about for so many years. No more talking, no more excuses. It's time to go for it, to put everything on the line. And ladies and gentlemen, there is a point where you've got to put everything on the line. There's going to be a point when you can't pay your bills. There's going to be a point when it's harder than you could have ever imagined. The ones that succeed are those that can persevere through all that and through all the anxiety and all the doubts that come in mind that say, you can't do it. You don't have what it takes. So I left Tony Robbins' organization. I had renters in my Utah house. Couldn't kick them out. They were in a lease. So I asked my parents, I'm going to do my first seminar in Seattle. Can we stay in the basement of your house for just, it's a walkout basement, but a basement nonetheless. Can we just, have a month or two there as I do my first seminar? They said, sure, of course. Well, to make a long story short, the business didn't take off like I had expected it to. Maybe some of you are, there yourself. You're expecting things to happen overnight. It's going a little slower than you expect. Well, that's how it was for me. Let me just tell you, those 2 months turned in with my little growing family into 5 years in that basement. It was humbling. It was very humbling. It was even more humbling when one of our cars that we had a loan on and had to pay a bill every month, we woke up one morning and it was gone. Lost my office space. We were down to the bare minimum. Burned through all of our savings and so forth. But I wasn't about to give up on my dream, and nor should you. I went to my wife and I said, honey, I had been talking for years about writing a book. You're going to do what? Write a book? Of course, she supported me. We didn't have an office space, so you don't do it in the downstairs of your basement with kids running around. You can't focus like that. So I took the one car we did have, and I drove it a mile down the hill from my parents' house. And I sat in that car for 2 months in the back seat with my laptop on my lap, typing. 8 hours a day, I typed. Turned on the car when I needed more battery. Turned it off. I wrote. At the end of writing that, I was in rough draft form. I says, I don't have a lot of time to kill here. You become very resourceful. When you have a goal you're going after, and you're not getting the results that you need to be having. So I sent the rough draft off to 20 celebrities, best-selling authors. And I sent one to Harlan C. Stonecipher. A couple months go by, I get this call. TJ, this is Harlan C. Stonecipher. I said, Mr. Stonecipher, how are you? He says, I have you outnumbered 4-1. I said, hello, everyone. I was on speakerphone. He says, I have 2 A+ to give you. He says, number 1, I give you an A+, you wrote a great book. Number 2, your second A+, I give you an A+ on persistence. He goes, Bruce Redwine told me, his assistant, told me how many times you called to check on me, to see if I had been reading your book, which was over 80 times. Over a course of a month and a half, I called every day, sometimes multiple times a day. I wanted to know. He says, TJ, I love the book so much, I'd like to write the foreword to it. And I would like you to speak at our national convention. And in 2005, that book I spoke at the national convention became a bestseller almost overnight. Someone would have called me up, a friend that later became a friend, called me up and said, I need 25,000 copies of If You Think You Can. My world changed. almost like that. But I had to go through the pain before I could get there, right? Luck was brought up earlier. And this is what Branch Rickey said about luck. Luck is the residue of design. There is no such thing, as Oprah said. There is no such thing as luck. You go after it with faith, hoping that each step is going to lead to something better. And not give up until you achieve the result that you're seeking. Because it's possible for you, I promise. I was truly blessed. My world changed almost overnight. And I promise you here today that if you have a goal that you're clear about, that you believe in, that you hope for, that you have faith toward, that if you will stay focused long enough, in time it will reveal itself to you. In time you will start asking the right questions that will give you the right answers, that will lead you down a path that will help you get where you want to go. Does that mean that you're not going to have failures along the way? Does that mean that you're not going to have struggles along the way? No. Part of life's way of telling you there's a better way, a better approach, is to put a setback in your way, put an obstacle in your way. To be resourceful means you have an obstacle, but you learn to creatively step aside it. Creatively find a way to move beyond the obstacle. That's what high achievers do. Most highly successful people, when you look at the research, did not start at the top. They started at the bottom and they worked their way up. And it wouldn't be good if you started at the top anyway. You do not want success handed to you, because life isn't about getting something handed to you. It's about becoming all that you're capable of becoming. Do you hear what I'm saying? Everyone say I. I. That's the purpose of life, to become all that you're capable of becoming, only in competition with your best self and no one else. It's amazing what can happen when you follow your passion and you have the belief that you can do it. If you think you can, was amazing blessing because of persistence. But as Dennis Waitley would say, he said, you'll write your best book in your darkest moment. That was my darkest moment. And to think that now I humbly get the opportunity to go in all types of corporations, all types of nonprofit organizations, and travel the world to share nothing more than words. Words trigger pictures, which trigger emotion.